I think that one of the key factors for me experiencing longevity so far and intending to establish myself for an increasing life of crescendo living, I think there's a value in your self-awareness, your self-knowledge, so that you can lead yourself into healthy practices and healthy ways of being.
Awareness and seeking to develop and understand yourself more, like that's not something that just happens in 1-2 hour session and you've got it, you're good for life. There's an investment of time that takes place.
We're back again to Welcome to Ministry podcast brought to you by the Baptist Union Generations Network. And we're excited to be back in the studio for another conversation.
So good to be back here. I'm Adam, engagement pastor at New Hope Baptist, one of the churches in the network.
And I'm Kimberly Smith. I get to work with our generations and emerging leaders in the Baptist family of Victoria, which is great. And today, our topic, we're talking about spiritual health, personal care, self-care, whatever language we want to put on that. When I start saying that to you, what comes to mind, Adam, when you've been hearing these buzzwords floating around and this topic comes up again? What does it mean for you?
This particular line of thinking of looking after yourself, being spiritually healthy is something that I feel like I've heard a lot of people talk to me about, and probably seen people in unhealthy ways in different times burn out or heard stories of burnout. I feel like I and potentially other people in my kind of age demographic in ministry are hyper aware of burnout and other things. And so to me, it means having some harmony in your life. I don't like to use language like work-life balance because balance implies that things have to be equal.
I use the word rhythm.
Rhythm's great
Flow
as well.
is another one.
Yeah. And you've just got to kind of figure out how you're doing, and you've got to do a check-in with yourself all the time. Like, am I spending time with like my wife and my family? Am I spending time with God? As pastors, we're talking about God a lot. Like, am I carving out time to spend my 30 minutes with Jesus? Like, what does that look like? On a really, really practical note for me, every week at the start of the week, I sit down and do a bit of a weekly review where from a productivity point of view, I look at what's ahead and that kind of a thing. And then from a self-care point of view, I do what a friend of mine has dubbed a PREMS check-in. And so
P-R-E-M-S.
P-R-E-M-S. And so it's basically I give myself a rating out of 5 for each of those letters. So P, physical. How am I going physically? Am I feeling okay? What's going on there? R, relational. How am I going in my relationships? I am what I would lovingly refer to as a raging extrovert. And so I need to spend time with people.
I challenge you.
You challenge me.
To an extrovert duel.
I reckon that we could be gone for a long time. Got to stick together.
Yeah, because we'd have the energy to do it because we'd be with people.
Just constant energy. E, emotional.
Yep.
M, mental. And S, spiritual. And so I think that the self-care thing needs to touch on all of those different aspects of our life. How am I going in these spaces? Have I carved out enough time? Have I thought about it? And for me, I find building something into my regular systems and routines, as rigid as that might seem initially, it gives me the space to be really honest with myself with how I'm going.
And not too long between check-ins, that you're not leaving it a long time before you sort of go, wait, hang on a minute, my physical health is deteriorating. It's like
totally. And my professional supervision person. Supervisor. That's of course there's a term for that I've just forgotten in the moment. My professional supervisor will often ask me very similar questions. I meet with them 5, 6, 7 times a year, depending on just how things are sitting and flowing. That's, that could be 2 months in between. That's a long time to not be thinking about how am I going in some of those spaces. Pastoral ministry, history and statistics tell us that the further you go down the track, sometimes it can feel lonely and isolating in a community, because people who, might have seen themselves as your peers, maybe stop seeing themselves as your peers a little bit. There's a few relationship dynamics in the space there. And so, if we're not checking in on that regularly, before we know it, you could be a raging extrovert, but you've been sitting on a 0% R for 4 months. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And so I find that's a little practice that I do.
PREMS, P-R-E-M-S.
PREMS. So
physical, let me get it.
Yeah.
It's physical, relational, emotional, mental, spiritual.
You got it. Got it in one.
Come on.
Nailed it.
I get a prize.
So I find that a very simple, just kind of self check-in thing. There's a few other, I think, habits that I try and implement to some capacity. I'm very aware that I need time to wind down. And so if I'm coming, off a work day and I've just got home, that there's the chaos of family and dinner and all sorts of stuff going on. I do sometimes just need 5 minutes
to defrag.
Yes. And just to have a breather. But that's something that I need to talk to my wife about, because if I don't have that conversation with my partner,
why are you not responding to me?
Then it's why am I not responding?
Where did you go?
That's something that I've learnt over time, and actually learnt in conversations from other pastors and their experiences. I think that having people around you is gold. Having people who are on a similar journey in similar, whether it be roles, experiences, whatever it might be, people who you are doing the journey with in different expressions. That has been some of the best things that I have done, is investing in those relationships.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like it. And I think for me, when I reflect on, a bit longer, my longevity score is higher than yours so far. But when I reflect back, I think that one of the key factors for me experiencing longevity so far and intending to establish myself for an increasing life of crescendo living, I think there's a value in your self-awareness, your self-knowledge, so that you can lead yourself into healthy practices and healthy ways of being. And so some of that is, those personality kind of tests, knowing, you just mentioned the extrovert thing. Knowing whether you are an extrovert or an introvert and the implications of that, it's a game changer for how you would manage your energy, because often we look to other people they're operating at this level, how can I not keep up with them? But knowing the difference in terms of how we move and how we get energized, extroverts being solar powered and introverts being battery powered, internal versus external, that matters. And, factoring that into the rhythms of your work week to make sure that you're not expecting yourself to extrovert all week if you're an introvert, or to introvert all week if you're an extrovert, and for me, recognizing that even as an extrovert, I need the people interaction. I need all of that to keep me motivated and filled up. My body needs to stop and rest, even though I don't want to. Like that. So knowing that about ourselves, going deeper into that more personality, knowing what kind of temperament you have and what environments you work better in. There's all sorts of mechanisms and tools for that out there now, leading from your strengths, or the Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni, or those sorts of things where yourself, and so you can help other people to understand yourself. You can understand other people. You can work into your strengths. You can try and mitigate your weaknesses. You can recruit around you to be a better, sort of as a team to be more rounded. But I think all of those things feed into our spiritual and emotional and mental health, and then our productivity and our capacity for sustainability, because they help us to do our jobs well, to do our day-to-day well, to manage ourselves, to help other people to manage themselves, and to work together well.
Awareness
as a team.
is massive, right? In all of those things that you mentioned. And sometimes I think that we enter into these spaces and, maybe we've heard a slightly negative thing on this personality test in inverted commas or whatever. And I think my encouragement would be that nothing's going to completely capture you because you are uniquely made by God, right? So it's never going to completely capture it. But anything that can even help you 1% more understand the way that you process, think, or relate to others, to be more self-aware, to potentially realize that I didn't take into account that this aspect might be a blind spot, or I might be relating to people in this way.
Yeah.
All of that awareness stuff, it just goes into helping vitality and with longevity, like you said. I think it's really gold.
It's a gift that you can give to your teams and to the people your family, to the people that work with you or live around you, to have that level of self-awareness so that you can direct other people to that, and help them know. I mean, it's never an excuse, but it can be an explanation,
yes.
That you are helping others to really sort of understand yourself. But if I look back on my own journey, like, as I say, that was key, is knowing myself, knowing others, understanding myself, helping others understand me. In terms of longevity, I have no hesitation to say I don't know that I would have sustained the type of ministry life I have so far if I wasn't aware of that. Because I can see circumstances where I just would have blown things up, or burnt out because I'm hitting my head against, a wall of something that I'm not if I didn't have that level of understanding. So I think that's been a super significant part of my own journey.
That helped you realize the importance of awareness? In your journey?
Yes. I spent most of my teen and young adult life feeling very other. You're too this, you're too that, you don't understand why you're like that, that kind of thing. And so reading around these ideas of temperaments, and the one for me was recognizing the sanguine temperament and how I embodied that. As I say, I think it really did change the trajectory of my life, and very quickly into ministry, like first weeks in my vocational ministry role, seeing how it impacted my leadership and my capacity to lead others. Because if I'm too much and too this and too that, I can help you understand what that means, and I can get what the difference is for someone else, and help us understand each other. I can speak your language and you can maybe try to understand mine. That working together thing, I think, has been. And so I think the trigger for me was becoming aware, made me realize the difference awareness makes, if that makes sense. Right. Like, it wasn't the absence of awareness. It was like becoming aware as I felt like I woke up.
Awareness and seeking to develop and understand yourself more, like, that's not something that just happens in 1 2-hour session and you've got it, you're good for life. There's an investment of time that takes place. We're in this tension of ministry, and we've spoken about, stewarding your time well and that kind of a thing in previous episodes. How would you encourage people stepping into ministry, figuring out how to balance work time with development and exercises that help us lead to awareness? Yeah,
that's a good thing to reflect on. I think the key is to work smarter, not harder, because often starting out in ministry, time is not your friend. And the earlier you are in your vocational ministry life, the harder some things are, until they become second nature, until muscle memory kicks in, until, you get better at delegating. Like, it's
your capacity grows significantly.
And you're starting kind of at the busiest part almost. And so it feels like to bring in some professional development or something is this add-on that's going to, like, I just don't have space. I don't have time. I'm already overburdened. So working smarter, not harder, is that how can I leverage the spaces that I already am in or am going to be in to learn as I go, so it could be drawing mentors into the physical spaces that you're working in. Can you come and like lead a devotion? And then I'm going to watch you lead the devotion.
Yes.
And I'm going to be curious about how it, not just what you're teaching us, but how it is you're teaching. So this is going to be a masterclass for me in devotion leading, because I'm just going to watch you do it, or when you have to preach, you've been invited to preach, or you're preaching at youth group, or, you're doing some sort of upfront communication. So that's going to require time for preparation. Can I bring someone into that preparation and I'm learning on the go? I think that's a first port of call, is just to transform the spaces that you are in into learning opportunities. And what can I extract from this? I mean, I find all the time, I just love the art of communication, and I love learning about it. I love witnessing it at work, that when you're watching someone communicate, you're like, whoa, you are brilliant at this. So I feel like I've always got the two tracks running, where it's like this bit's listening to what you're teaching me or what you're communicating, what the content is. But over here, I'm taking note of how you're speaking and why I'm so captivated, or, what are the mechanisms that you're using, the tools. And I'm taking the time after the message. What was that? Like, where'd you get that from? Like, teach me more. Tell me, how did you make that decision? What is what is some of your, practices? It's being curious in every environment that you're in. What can I learn from this space? And I think that, obviously I want to encourage people to carve out intentional time for development, but be in the posture of development always. I can learn from anyone, anywhere. I can be watching a Disney movie and I can learn leadership skills. I can learn emotional intelligence. I can learn, a whole lot of great lines and excellent songs. But I can learn a lot of things from just in my life, be that open, lifelong learner, that curiosity, switching your brain into that space. I think that's key to fitting it in to a busy schedule.
I had this epiphany last year, and it's in the space of this development and learning, and so often we find that we can put ourselves in situations where content and learning and stuff that exists to develop us is just thrown at us. I can listen to a million podcasts, I can listen to books, I can read books, I can talk to people, and hearing isn't developing, right? And so
that's good.
I think that there is this incredible need and requirement for reflection in this phase. I think reflection takes something you hear and creates space for you to develop. And so if you're going to a conference, it's all good and well to sit there, have stuff come at you, take some notes. Do you know what's the real gold? Sitting down the following week, carving out an hour, making time, scheduling time to go, let me read my notes. Let me see what stuck out. Let me actually consider, what am I going to apply from this? Because I reckon in every single thing that we're a part of, there's always something that we can learn, apply, tweak, or grow from. And if we put ourselves in a posture where we're seeking to learn, grow, and develop in everything that we do, the multiplication of that is unreal. It means that in our little clusters that we interact with, whether it be on a team you lead, on a staff team, or a community of practice that you're involved in, whatever it might be, the little things that we pick up, we start to show other people in how we lead, in how we communicate, in how we talk about what we do. There's an incredible just multiplication that can happen.
Yeah, 1 Timothy, Paul talks to Timothy and says, let people see your growth.
Yeah.
That it's not just enough to grow. Let that be a learning for other people in watching and celebrating your growth, but also perhaps being kind of drawn along by the growth that you're demonstrating.
Because there's this real, tension in ministry that you often being hear it said in different places in different ways about we can't take anywhere where we can't take people to places where we haven't been ourselves. And we can discuss implications of that, till the cows come home, because God can do incredible things. And once we move past that, just this idea of, if I'm seeking to encourage and develop others, of course I need to be seeking to grow and develop myself. Like ministry is too busy. There's just too much going on for you not to grow.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you need to. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think there's something really valuable in having a posture of seeking to learn, grow, and develop in that space. And where I think the spiritual vitality element of spiritual health comes into all of this as well is I think it's easy to sometimes get caught in the doing space of ministry, and we can get focused into doing the things better. Carving out time for a spiritual and emotional connection with God is just so important.
Yeah, one of the key factors that sort of ties back into what I was saying about the personality and temperament thing is that recognition of your spiritual personality, where
that concept has changed my life in the past year since that's hit home.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the idea of that, and there's a lot of different diagnostic tools you can use around this, and different language that's applied to it. If you hit the Google, but that idea that we all have an innate sort of personality or temperament in terms of how we relate to God, and I think that's been a significant thing for me in my ministry and discipleship journey is recognizing that I'm not like everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean that. Captain Obvious in certain ways, but I'm not like them in the way that they relate to God, in the way that they refresh their soul, in the way that they commune with God. I've like a lot of the ways that I would say I meet with God most powerfully involve other people. And because I'm an extrovert, it's because I'm an external processor. Like one of my greatest joys is praying for other people and watching God at work in someone else's life, or it's having a conversation and hearing about what God's been doing in your world. Like that to me that's worship. Like that's a part of my experience of God that is so life-giving and is so life-shaping in terms of my walk with God. And yet I know that there are times where I need to do the quietness and the reflection and the more meditative engagement with God alone, without others. But the reality is that is not as energizing for me. It is not. It isn't as instantly recognizable to me as God at work. And so, but that's the tension that we all live in, is trying to work out what works for us and how is it that God speaks to me? How is it that I hear from God? How is it that I truly, truly nourish my soul? How is it that I maintain my well-being in every aspect? Because it's not going to be the same as anybody else. I mean, you like spreadsheets, right? Like
I love a spreadsheet.
Yeah, see?
The best.
Yeah.
But for other people, exactly.
So we're all that's my quintessential example of how we're different, Adam. You like spreadsheets, and I don't even really know how to use them, but I do like to read them afterwards.
I think that like we all, every person has a particular context in which they were shaped in, and I think particularly our senior leaders and the way that they relate to God, even subconsciously, can become a little bit of the gold standard of how, now that I'm stepping into pastoral ministry, how I need to relate to God. And so, if you've got a senior leader who loves their soap every day, faithful, kings and queens of soap, just smash it out every day. If that isn't like, if that is emotionally draining for you initially, that might not be the regular way that is helpful for you to relate to God. It's not to say it's a bad thing. I think sometimes the like you said, the stretch goal can be really, really beneficial. I did a 6-hour silent retreat on my birthday once, and it was painful.
But you lived.
But I lived, and it's some of the most fruitful, one-on-one time that I've been able to spend with God. And did I walk away going, I'm going to be doing a weekly 6-hour silent retreat? No.
No.
But have I carved out particular times where I've tried to take a spiritual retreat day or morning or something, and had space for quiet and for being still. Yeah, I have, and that's been really, really incredible.
Yeah.
I have found that conversations with others has been really critical for me in this space of hearing how other people are relating and what they're doing.
Just continues to expand your picture of God and who he is, doesn't it?
Yes. So I think there's something really powerful in any time that we can see a new edge or consider unpacking something in a new way, and then bringing that to other people as well. As pastors, as people in vocational ministry, it's going to be natural that people are going to look to us and see how we're relating. The more that we can be modeling the way in that space, like it's really incredible.
How do you know that, like with your prems or whatever, what are the indicators for you that maybe your spiritual health isn't where it should be, or maybe you're depleted in any one of those? Like what are the little warning signs that show up in that?
Physical health, I think, for me is around sleep. How am I sleeping? How's that going? Relationally, it probably has a bit to do with when was the last time I hung out with a friend?
Yeah, right.
Rather than just like I've got a nearly 2-year-old and people I connect with in ministry time. And so, I spend a lot of time with family, but spending time with friends is really important to me as well. Emotionally, it's that battery thing. Like sometimes I'm solar powered, but sometimes my battery does need to be recharged as well. And it feels a little weird sometimes, and I might need a night. And when I'm starting to sense that, that one in particular, I need to get on really quickly. Mentally, it's the self-talk thing. If my backing track is sounding a little bit more negative, I've got to do a bit of a check in there. And spiritually, I think it's things like if I'm spending more time praying publicly than I am privately.
Right.
So, if I'm spending more time only touching base with God because of an organizational matter rather than my own spiritual, that tends to be a bit of a check for me. And there are things that I think over time I've put in place to become aware of that, especially this Prems check-in helps me check in on that every week. The thing that I've got after that is, okay, cool. Yeah. Pray for the week. Yeah. Look at what you've got. Pray for it. And, it kind of resets me in that factor a little bit.
Ask me.
What about you?
Thanks for asking. One of the key factors for me is I start talking about being busy, because I reject the busy culture. Like, I don't like that that's the answer to the question, how are you busy? I have a very full life. Other people would call it busy, but in my mind, I'm looking to fill it, because it's there to be filled.
It's the space where you thrive.
And but in my language and in my thinking, I can tell when I'm a little bit spiritually, emotionally depleted, because I start saying, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. The other language hook that I have is I start saying, I have to. Like, I've got to go speak to this. I'm getting to preach on, this Sunday. I have to. Yeah. If I start saying I have to rather than I get to, because it's an intentional language hook for me that in the midst of busyness, or, when things are a little bit more challenging, that I just remind myself that I get to do some incredible things. I get to partner God in ministry and mission. I get to be living in a beautiful home in a beautiful place with a beautiful life, in the sense of particularly comparatively. But, I get to be this person and have this life rather than I have to. And so there's a couple of others too, like little language hooks that when I hear myself speaking that way, it's like something's out of alignment. That's the wheel wobble kind of thing.
And so I guess so that triggers happen for you. You hear the wheel wobble. what's your course correct?
Yeah.
Moment?
Mostly it's a little bit of a self-reprimand, like get over yourself, move along. Like sometimes it's that. But it is that, okay, I'm depleted. So let's go back to that source. Like, that's where do I get that sense of, how do I get back into God's presence or an awareness of his presence, because it's always there. For me, it's flick on some worship music, because it's hard to and have negative thoughts at the same time. Because you kind of got to concentrate. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like it's like you say, the backing track, let's flip sides and let's listen to this, the scripture and adoration of God. Like, let that be the language, let that be what my mind's mulling over. Sometimes it's a diary check. Maybe I've said yes to too many things. Maybe I need to
Maybe I've cancelled too many of my retreat or prayer days that I've
exactly, and I've squeezed out some things. So maybe I need to do a recalibrating of that and check in. Maybe I need to step back from something to fill that with time with God in whatever space that is. To be in church as a worshiping participant rather than as a contributor. Like doing the things that might realign.
Saying the right no's means that you can say yes to the best thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And
really cool.
And just spending time in God's word. And I know leaders say that, and it's so ethereal, kind of like just spend time in the word.
Yep.
But tangibly for me, that I love to listen to scripture. So to play using the app, just get someone else to read.
Yeah, that booming voice.
I know sometimes has a little bit of suspense, a little bit of background music, like it brings it all. And I actually find when it's read out loud to me, I interact with it. So, that's interesting, or because it makes it feel more conversational to me rather than it being flat on the page. It is, spending time reflecting on God's word, and so there's some practical steps, places, spaces, times that we can all find that are individualized for us, so that when we have to get back into the word or to that has a tangible quality to it, not just an idea. Because I think sometimes we can be unhelpful in how we speak about that. It sounds like it just falls from the sky and just happens on its own, but it doesn't.
Incredible.
Yeah. So
been so good to chat. Another week done.
Yeah. So we encourage all of our listeners, do some personal inventory. What does it look like for you? Maybe it's a prems. Maybe it's the understanding your own temperament or your spiritual temperament. Maybe it's, getting into some conversations with the people that you live with or work with to say, what are we seeing? What are we sensing? So that you're more spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, and relationally aligned.
Love it. We'll see you next time.